everybody. You're listening to the If It Was a Book podcast, the show that takes real life stories and rewrites them into what would happen if it was a book for people who love reading, writing, pop culture, and general ADHD chaos. Today, I'm joined by Nathan Shuherk of Schizophrenic Reads. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so
Hello.
much for having me.
Yeah, and you are well known for being a huge nonfiction reader. So we're going to pull you a little bit out of your comfort zone today, and we're going to write a fiction story.
No, I'm excited for this. When I listened to the podcast, I was like, man, this is a whole new game for me. So this is gonna be fun and hopefully not terrible. I think I'm like creative
No,
enough.
it will be totally fine. And I think that there's a lot of different ways that you could go. You don't have to like stick to one genre. And as you said, you've listened to some other episodes, so you know that what you start with isn't necessarily what you end with. It's just whatever happens.
You see where it takes you.
So for those of you new to the podcast, this podcast is a little bit different where we actually give listeners a little peek into our guests' writing/brainstorming style by taking a real story and rewriting it into what would happen if it was a book. So Nathan, do you have a story that you'd like to share with us today?
Yeah, so I was a sophomore in college and I was studying abroad in Ireland. And there was one night that I went to the next town over to drink. And drinking was like specifically not allowed because I went to like a Christian college and they're like, don't ever drink while you're in Ireland. We're like, we're in Ireland. We're gonna have a fun time. And so I went out by myself and I went to like the next town over and I took the train and I was just drinking at a bar. And as happens, I just stayed too late and then there were no trains left. So I had to walk basically across like a small mountain range to get back to my town. And I ended up getting kind of lost on the mountain and then staying like the entire night in isolation and thought like I was worried that I was going to like, succumb to hypothermia. I didn't really have like that many clean or like that heavy clothing. And so I was just like trying to keep warm and just like we were on the Irish seaside. So the mountains are literally the coast. And so I'm like both like looking into the Irish Sea and then like on this mountain and it's terrifying and there's no lights and I only have a few hour like battery left on my phone for a flashlight. And yeah, it was just a terrifying night. And yeah, that was just kind of one of those weird and then also because I'm schizophrenic, and if people don't know anything about that, but I have like a lot of paranoia and hallucinations and stuff. So it was like not only just a scary experience for literally anyone, but like me in particular, it was like, man, I still think about that night like routine. I still have dreams about that night. And that was like more than a decade ago.
Yeah, that sounds horrifying.
Yeah, not good. Do not
Like my
recommend.
heart's kind of racing.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that sounds horrible. And like so you had gone out to drink. So then were
Mhm.
you also like a little drunk?
Very much. Yeah, very much so.
Okay.
I think I probably left the bar at like midnight or so because like drinking culture there is heavy, but they don't drink too super late. But I think it was like maybe midnight or so, and then that's when I found out there was no train. And then yeah, I think I didn't get home, didn't get back to my town until I would say like 6:30 in the morning, and it was only like a 4 mile walk. So it was like I covered 4.5 miles in like a 6 hour period. So yeah.
But it was dark and scary, so I feel
Just
like
dark and
that's
scary
fair.
in a mountain, and I got lost, obviously. So there was definitely a
Yeah.
point, I think maybe like an hour and a half of that day where I just sat there. And I was just like, deep breath, try not to like absolutely, like lose all of like your emotional wherewithal. And so I just like kind of sat on a mountain and was like contemplating what is going to happen to me. And then also, this was 2013, so I didn't have like cell service, because I'm studying abroad, so I don't have like a European phone. So I literally was just like, well, I got to figure this out by myself.
That's so scary. I appreciate the hustle of like, I'm just gonna walk home. I
Yeah.
don't think that I would have been like, hello, bar person. Call me an $800 cab,
Right.
please. I
Yeah.
don't know what to do.
No, that is the hubris of a drunk 20-year-old. They're like, no matter what bar I find myself at, I can walk home. And sometimes
Yeah.
you really can't.
It sounds like you did. You made it.
I
did
did.
it.
Yeah, I did technically. I did succeed. Now, did I leave lasting scars on myself? Sure. Like I've had to live with that, but
Neither here nor there.
yeah, sure.
Okay, so, well, what kind of story would you like to write about getting lost in the forest? I feel like
Mm,
there's a lot of ways that I can think of, but
yeah.
what were you thinking of?
Well, I thought there's opportunity, I think, for some type of like magical realism. Like I meet someone out there that night and like that something happens that changes the trajectory of my life. I also think maybe it becomes like completely horror in some sense. Like maybe
Mhm.
maybe I do end up somehow in like a Groundhog Day trapped in my own isolation forever or of some sort, like
No.
some weird thing. Or I do think it becomes kind of this weird starting point of a literary novel about finding your love for like adventure, of like figuring
Mhm.
out like who you are because of something terrible. And then it just turns you into this person that you never would have considered yourself to be beforehand.
Yeah. I can see any of those. I think that my first thoughts were also either magical realism or doing horror. So my magical realism thoughts was that I finished The Rose Bargain earlier this week, which is a like fairy story. And so I'm like, okay, so you're drunk and you're in the woods and you end up in like a fae realm. And
Yeah.
their thing is also that they like make you keep drinking and now you're dancing and you can't stop and your feet are bleeding and it's like it can get scary.
Sure.
On the opposite side, so I don't know where or I'm sure that I do because I've seen your Instagram for whereabouts in the US you are, but I don't know if there are Appalachian type stories in Ireland where like there are scary things in the mountains, but there could definitely be scary things in the
Yeah,
mountains.
there's definitely like the Fae in Ireland. Like that's a big part of the culture is just like the kind of broad fairy supernatural element that I think there are maybe some similarities between like Appalachian folklore. So I think there's definitely some elements of that. I don't know them super well, but I think there's definitely that's one route the story could go.
Yeah. Well, you gave a few options. What would you like to do? I can go anywhere.
Let's go the fairy route because that I think that I'm gonna have to pull more from you on that than anything because I don't read I don't read that type of stuff really. So I'm excited to see how both of us can craft a story out of that because I'm like I don't really know the plot points. I don't know what is gonna happen. I only know vaguely that this is a thing people love reading about.
Yeah, well, there's two options there. There are scary fae and there are like hot fae. And either one is fine.
Let's go scary Faye. Let's get in a
Scary
little
Faye.
let's this is the month of October. Let's have a little fun with it.
Yeah, okay. So I would probably do your stumbling out of the bar. You're a little inebriated. You start
Hmm.
walking through the forest into the mountains. I'm gonna say, because the Fae are tricksters. They want to trick you. They want to get you.
Yeah.
So they'll probably set up some sort of light where you're like, "Oh, I'm almost at the town." So you've been walking for like 30 minutes. You think you're headed in the right way. Maybe
Hmm.
you've been going in circles. Who knows? It's dark. And the Fae are going to start leading you to where they want you to
There's
go.
just like I'm leaving the bar. I'm like walking along the beach, and there's just like the lights that like lead up the trail that starts at the mountain pass. And so like it's a
Mhm.
perfect thing. I do think there probably needs to be someone that like warns me. Someone that goes like, just call a taxi. I'm like, no, I don't want to spend $50. Like the barkeep or some patron at the bar that I'm walking out with. Like, so I think someone has to warn me because I need like, you need that character
I
choice that
agree.
really sets it out for disaster.
So do you want to be warned at the end of the night or do you want to be warned before you get there where your like roommates are like, well, don't stay out too late because, the Fae.
Oh, I think page two. Yeah, I think it's just what I'm experiencing that night while I'm out. So some stranger I've never
Okay.
talked to. I'm kind of distrustworthy. I don't, I'm like, I don't believe in your Irish fairy tales, like I'm fine,
Yeah, maybe it's somebody who's, like, very drunk at the bar, who's, like,
Mhm.
always there, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, don't listen to old Smeagol," or whatever his
Yeah.
name is, like, he's always saying crazy stuff, but
Mhm.
he's like, they're out there, like,
Yeah.
especially it's one of those days, the moon is full, they're out,
Mhm.
it's one of those extra scary days. Don't
Yeah.
be walking alone at night.
Just too much hubris, and then also you get outside and you're like, "It's just so nice out." Like, this is a lovely evening. You've got the alcohol blanket on you. You're just having a good time. You love walking. No, it's Ireland. It's these green pastures. It's just a great landscape to go
Yeah.
explore. And, oops.
So, do you want them to be tricksters in your world? So, where it's
Mm,
more magical realism, where they're messing with you here? Or do you want them to lead you to a pathway where you are now in the Fey realm and
mm.
we're a little bit more fantasy?
I think we'll go with, like, they've entered my world. I also think that's fun. That's a fun element because of like, the schizophrenia, the hallucinations I already had. It's, like, basically kinda just substituting
Oh,
the
yeah.
insane for the spiritual, which I think is a fun little, like, creative storytelling method of figuring that out. So, I think it'd be fun to be walking and to, like, the the tricks that your mind plays on you that you don't know are real or not, and that you're not sure. It's the paranoia or it's the fear of the night, and you're not sure what actually lingers out in the darkness.
Yeah. Oh, I like that a lot. Oh, so do you want to actually meet the Fae, or do you want them to just mess with you and you kind of not know
Mhm.
whether or not this is like really happening or that it like? So I'm thinking about you can hear sort of laughter in the trees,
Mhm.
and is that the wind or is it the fairies that are? I mean, it is the fairies, but do you, as the character, find out that it's the fairies, or by the end of the story, do you still have the deniability of like maybe I was just imagining that?
I think I don't know if this is gonna totally throw you off. I think there's skepticism at first, and then there's a level of believability in which the meeting actually takes place towards the 2/3 mark of the story, and then kind of
Okay.
it happens. That's the big crescendo of the story, and then the story then descends from there about, like, was that a real thing that happened or not? Like, I think there leave it to an element of, like, you don't know. You don't know if this is the fear and the paranoia that happens in the night, or maybe it was something. So I think leave a level of speculation surrounding like the main character's involvement. So not getting like totally sucked into a world, but having at least these interactions that leave it kind of possible that something did happen, but possible that nothing happened.
I like that a lot. I think that a good way to do that towards the for the end, we'll back up, but at the end to have that like, well, did that happen or not, is to like have them wake up on the edge of the forest, like right
Mm.
outside the town that they're trying to get to. So like, were they dreaming that or not? A lot of Fae stuff is that they are messing with you either in what you're eating or what you're drinking. And so we can say that they're either consuming more, like they meet the fairy and the fairy gives them something to eat or drink or throws something in their face, like magical powder or what have you. And they like it gives them a contact high or an actual high. And then by the end, they pass out.
What about
And
the
then, like,
about the
was that
barkeep?
all a dream?
The weird bartender that or the bar patron that warned me not to go hands me a water bottle and it's like,
Oh,
"You should need this for your walk, like, just you don't wanna get dehydrated up there." And he hands me something, and
I
I
like
start
that.
walking
I
a little
also
bit,
like
and I get a little tired towards, like, the start of the actual trail. I get out of town, I get towards the wilderness, and I'm like, "I need to rest for a bit and take a sip of my water."
I like that, and Faye are so tricky that I would say that he is Faye, and he
Mhm.
was like, "Well, I'm giving you a warning. You did not heed my warning. Now you
"Here's
get
your
to
water
play
bottle."
tricks with me."
Yep.
Yeah, here's your water bottle. See what happens. That could be
Yeah.
fun. I like that. I think that's fun. And I also like that this Faye goes and like torments the town enough that the town is like, "Oh, we know him. Like
He's the public
he's just
nuisance.
this crazy drunk guy." Yeah.
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 Yep. He's there every night of
I
the
think
every
that's
night.
so fun. I like that, and I like how you're including a lot of like this could be happening or it could not be happening. It could all be in your
Mhm.
head kind of thing. I just think that's so interesting, especially since you were saying that you were hallucinating at the time.
Yeah.
What were some of
Vivid.
your hallucinations? Let's tie that in.
Yeah, it was a lot of I think it was a lot of there's this weird thing there, I think, with schizophrenia where there's a level of insurity with what you're hallucinating, and so it's the way that, like, shadows move that you're not sure that shadow should have moved that way, or, like, something in your periphery is shifting, but when you go to look, you're not really sure. So it plays on this level of kind of believability that's kind of on these fringes where, like, yeah, I'm out in the wilderness. That could have been a rabbit right there that I saw, but it could have not been at the same time, and I think there's this level of kind of, like, never being quite sure of what's going on, and I think keeping that within, like, my character as well, kind of a substitution of sorts, but also I think it does lend itself to being that you're just kind of on edge, you're kind of just unsure, and so this definitely is a novel I think, I know a couple episodes that you've done is some kind of quasi romances and stuff and just having a fun time. I'm like, there's this one's a heavy internal monologue type of a book.
That's okay.
We're getting real big into the character.
No, I like that though. I think that that's really interesting. So, and you may have seen from other episodes that I have like a very visual brain. And so, like, I'm picturing a scene that's more movie, less book of like descending into panic as
Mm,
you're walking and you're seeing these shadows that aren't moving quite right. And, whoa, what was that? And that just going on and on. And it's getting darker, he's spinning, getting a little dizzy,
Mhm.
seeing things where you shouldn't be seeing things, still walking on, still walking on. I think he's gonna bump into what was that guy's name? I named him something stupid. I need to name him something good. Smeagol. Wait, I gotta change his name. He can't be Smeagol. What's a good
What's a good
fairy old man name?
oh, you're gonna have to go on with this one because both
Gosh, let
I'm
me
so
look up
terrible
some
at
Irish
naming.
names.
There's
Irish.
the Irish TikToker. I don't know if he ever comes across your feed, Garen, which is a very, very Irish sounding name, but he is just this comically
Let's go with that.
strange character. So
Aaron.
we'll call him Garen.
Okay, so he is like spinning and getting very stressed, and it's very dark, and he's very scared. And then he bumps into Garen, and
Mhm.
he's like, "Oh, Garen, what are you doing here?" And he's like, "Well, I was like a little worried about you, so I thought
Mhm.
I'd follow you and see if I can help you get home. This isn't where you're used to being." He's like pretending to be very kind. I'm saying we're halfway through this water bottle by now.
Sure.
He is like getting high from this fairy juice that he has been given. So now Garen is like gonna basically not like party in a fun way, but like party with our main character
Mhm.
where he's just gonna keep messing with him and having all these scary things. So that's the meeting with the Fae. If we want to, he can keep like messing with stuff around where he like has friends that are like shaking trees or
Mm.
making lights go off in different places. Cause
I
he can
like
be
the
by himself or
idea
he can have like accomplices.
I like the idea of like there's kind of things just moving about in the distance and you don't know like whether he's pulling the strings of this or he's got helpers, but just things that, like rocks falling in certain ways. You're like, what is happening here? Or like I don't know if phase have like supernatural, but like a huge gust of wind out of nowhere. You just like I think the
Mhm.
natural elements playing with you in ways that like make the character seem much more vulnerable, but also like within the realm of still like totally real things that could have happened in the moment.
Yeah. So you were saying that the mountains are also the seaside. Are they like cliffy seaside?
Yeah, so
In my
that
mind, they
like
are.
yeah, well they're just basically this it's a path that goes like up this hill and it goes to this cross at the top of the hill and then it kind of descends down through this like kind of shrubbery. There's not a lot of like trees in Ireland, so it's a lot of like 4, 5, 6 foot shrubbery, and it kind of just goes through this path, and it's called I think the hill, maybe it was a different hill that I'm thinking of, but it was called Little Sugarloaf. And on the hill, there's a couple of these like old dilapidated stone buildings that used to be like parishes. And so there's just kind of these like ancient moss covered stone buildings that are just abandoned and that you can just like walk through and stuff. And so that's how your path goes. It goes from the beach up this hill to this cross and then down through this like kind of big shrubbery path. But there's several paths that like I dissect and intersect back on each other. And so it's very easy to not take the right one, especially at nighttime, like when you can't see exactly, what direction. And this whole time you've got the seaside on your side, but for a lot of it, it's not visible. You can only tell that it's there by sound. And then some points you get like literally very close to the seaside where it's like you would stand a chance of kind of falling off. And I think at some point you it'd be fun because the train actually rides underneath that, and it kinda goes through, like, an underpass through this mountain. I do think it'd be fun, I think, just for, like, the level of what is happening here, for the character to see the train going by. Like, why is the train running at night? You can tell, and maybe there's even
Yeah,
people on
especially
it or
since
something.
he missed the last train.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was no train. They said that the trains were down for the night, and so maybe he gets up there and checks his phone, and it's 3:15 or something, and he sees the train slowly going by.
I like this. I like this a lot. So, okay, I'm gonna back us up just a touch. So we were running through the forest, we were really scared, and that's I think when we're gonna do the sit down where you sat for an hour and a
Mhm.
half just with your thoughts and you're,
Yeah.
you're like, and I think that Garen, I almost called him Smeagol again. I was like, I think that Garen is going to get frustrated that you're not playing into he wants you to be scared. He wants you to
Yeah.
entertain him. So that's when he appears to show you that he's there and to like start getting your nerves going again, but also to start you moving again.
Mhm.
It's common in these like Fae type stories that they are so bored. They just want entertainment. And so if you can't entertain them, it is entertaining for you to die. So I think that he could be leading you towards that cliff that you can't see.
Mhm.
like wanting you to fall off. And I think that as you get closer and closer to that, you can hear it, but also there are other sounds and you're still scared and the shadows are moving. And as you get closer and closer, you're like about to fall off and he's watching and he's like, do it, fall off. And that's when I think you should see the train and then be like, wait, but the train shouldn't be going, like, what's going on? And so
Yeah.
that's when you start to question, because I think you have to get out. We have to escape somehow
Mhm.
from the Fae and what he's trying to do to you as a stranger walking alone. So I think maybe that's when you start second guessing what's going on around you and starting to realize that something is wrong.
Do you think this should be like kind of a
How would
verbal
you get out?
confrontation? How would I get out? I've got to use some trick of my own, right? Like I've got to be
Right.
tricky. I've got to
Yeah.
maybe I like the idea. I don't know how to incorporate this. I like the idea of somehow some challenge of the wits or some challenge of
Mhm.
like the Highland games in Scotland of these like ridiculously weird sources of athleticism. It's like how far can you tip a log over or it's like some type of little game that we can play, something that between us. I do think that would be a fun, but I don't know exactly what. Or it could just be a classic time waster of getting like an actual game. Somehow there's, I don't know, like chess or something for us to like actually like
Ooh.
quietly compete at face to face where we have to like kind of confront each other through this like mirage of a game.
Yeah, that like basically once the sun comes up, he has no power over you, so you just have to
Mhm.
kill time until the sun goes up. Okay. I like the chess. I also think that, like, fairy always love a riddle. Not that
I
I'm
think
good at coming up with a riddle.
Yeah, I think what would be really, I think, picturesque in some sense, and I think of like vistas oftentimes when I'm reading or thinking of stories. It's more about like a moment that I can come up with an inspiration, but of maybe throwing rocks into the sea, like skipping stones, or like how far we can if we
Mm.
can throw a rock to the seaside or something. Seeing like how maybe there's been some tension building between the characters, and you can tell they're not being honest with each other. I think that's probably like some level of phase. Like there's, obviously the secrecy of little competitions that we propose to each other in order to get the other one to tell the truth. Like if I beat you at this stone throw, you have to tell me which way to get home. It's obviously someone and like I think the believability part of it is like my character would probably say like this is a guy that's like I know he's fucking with me, maybe not in like a total like spiritual sense, but like someone that is obviously like there's something more nefarious, but I can't tell exactly like what the source is. And so let's compete. Let's break down these barriers. And if you want to fuck with me, like, why don't I see if I can win you over
Yeah,
in some way?
I think that going back to the very beginning where he was saying, like, "Oh, be careful out there, like, there's fairies out there," and then the
Mm-hmm.
barkeep is like, "Ignore him, he's annoying, he's always going on about things." Maybe we should get some more information about Faye then, where, like,
Mm.
he's always talking about how about Faye. His favorite is that they can't say no to a challenge or
Oh
his
yeah,
and
there you go.
something like that, where then when we're later challenging him, that there's a little bit of precedence for that, and I think I like chess. I think that that's good. I also think that it can take a long time.
Yeah.
I think that you can, like, really push a game of chess to just take forever. I also think that it would be kind of fun and interesting to do a, like, best 2 out of 3, and you
Mm-hmm.
each pick a test or a challenge, and then the winner of the first challenge gets to decide what the 3rd challenge is kinda thing. Um,
Yeah,
and
I
then you can
think
just keep going like, "Oh, well, actually 3 out of 5. Oh, well, actually 4 out of 7."
I think it'd be fun to have something like we have to do best out of 3, but in the competitions, we have, like, a physical one, a mental one, and, like, a emotional one. So it's like, yeah, we have to play the smart we have to do the chess or some type of brain game between us, and then the next one is our creative soul is, like, we write we each have to write a sonnet and then propose it to each other and see whose is better. And then like another one is throwing a stone. It's like we have to do these dynamic parts of these differences between us and stuff. And I think it would be an interesting way to explore the characterization. And I think it would be also like a good point in which you could show whichever challenge it is, you could show the like dominant force of a fairy, which I have to think would be like in the creative. It's like we do write a poem together or
They're
something.
tricky.
Or yeah, this is so much better. It's like how wow, that's mine's really elementary, it's really boring or something like that. And so it's like there's some way that I get a suspicion that he's not playing fair. Like there's something.
Mhm. Well, and if you two are the judge of whose sonnet was better, you
Mhm.
can easily both say, "Well, mine was better."
Yeah.
I think that he could try to trick you into being like, "Well, it's only polite to, like, say the other person's was good."
Yeah.
And so you say, "Oh, yeah, yours was good," expecting him to say that yours was also good, and then he's like, "Obviously, mine was the best." I'm like, "Okay, tricky fairy."
Instead of chess is a hard thing to it's like it's nighttime. Exactly how did we find a chessboard
Yeah,
and
it's very
stuff?
dark.
I think we could do, maybe find ourselves in one of those moss covered temples and do a back and forth trivia
Mhm.
competition to each other. Ask each
Ooh!
other like questions. Maybe not riddles, because I think riddles I don't know. I'm just not creative enough to be like good at riddles. So that like I'm like, oh man, if I had to
I get
write
that.
that, I'm like, oh, that would take me longer to write that section of the book than the rest of the book combined. But maybe it's like trivia, bar trivia. He'd been playing it in the bar beforehand or something like that, and then we get to this kind of dilapidated church, and we have to
Well, and
ask these questions to each other.
as an Irish exchange student, they wouldn't have too much history, like Irish folklore knowledge. So if it's Irish trivia and you're like, well, the fairy who lives here for 400 years
Y-
or me who's been
Yeah,
here for 2 weeks,
yeah.
who's gonna win? But I think that that would be good. I think, and I can picture our person having done some research beforehand on Ireland before moving, so they would know some of the answers. I think that they
Mhm.
could do like pretty good.
Mhm.
I also am really bad at thinking up riddles. I
Yeah.
can always guess the answer to a riddle very quickly, but I cannot think of a riddle at
Mhm.
all.
I I think also I think there's something fun about the kind of like the psychological tension in competition between characters.
Mhm.
Like very much I don't know if you've read like the Neapolitan Quartet, but like the whole first two books of this, the like kind of intellectual back and forth between Ferrante's characters of they're just kind of like at each other's throats intellectually, but they're like supposed to have this air of like care and love for each other because they're best friends, but like secretly internally that there is this like kind of war happening, and I think it provides this huge playground to be able to like explore uniqueness within how characters operate and especially like these moments of tension. And I think like this could be a really weird like unique kind of form of playing with that a little bit.
Yeah, you just said the best friends thing, and that it's a cop out for sure because it makes it much easier to write. But if there are two fae, then you can turn them against each other, and that's how you can
Mm.
escape. But again, that's cop out. That just makes it much easier to write. But I do think that that would be interesting. But
I
I
mean, we
think
could we
that
could meet
that would.
someone along the way, someone the Fae knows, like I mean, it's a very public path. It's between two towns, like it would
Mhm.
be very plausible.
I think I want to stick with just one. I
Okay.
think I like the battle of wits with just one other person, one fae, and our main character. I also think that that makes it a little bit more like this could happen to you, which is always like the goal of good fiction is to like put you in their shoes.
Mhm.
Well, somehow if you went and did these exact things, this could
Yeah.
happen to you. I like the 3 challenges, especially since we sat for like an hour and a half by ourselves before he came and got us. We can make it so that the challenges end with the sun coming up and
Mm,
us getting away.
yeah.
But I think like the sun will be cresting the hillside
Mhm.
and the fae will say something like you're no fun and then snap their fingers and you pass out and then you come to at the edge of your town and was it all a dream, did it happen, who could say?
I like the idea of even I don't know how much the, sleeping thing is, like, necessary for the Fae. Exactly. I don't know how this works, but I do like the idea of, like, walking away, of not even, like, falling asleep, but needing to go fetch something. It's light enough that I can go see something that I need to go, like, pick up or whatever it is, and, like, kind of walking
Mhm.
away, and when I return to the path, he's like he's not. So it really is like
Who
there is like an element of just like you really, because I think if you have something type of falling asleep, I think in the first scene, it's maybe not totally falling asleep. Maybe it's just like drifting in and out of like kind of drunkenness
Yeah.
of consciousness of paranoia. It's like all these like kind of different conflating levels that are just like playing with emotions, and then suddenly moment of clarity as he approaches. And you're like, oh, that's a transition of this like psychological state. And I think in the later part when it can be even something passive as in, like, going down to "Oh, I want to get this picture of sunrise over the seaside," and going,
Mhm.
"I'll be right back," and going to snap it or something, and then when returning and he's no longer there, there's gotta be a lot of tension in order to, like, transition it to be something that's, like, very lovely, but I think leaving it in the realm of total speculation surrounding, like, the
Yeah.
realness of it, I think that would be a fun thing to have.
I think whether you step away or not, I think that as the sun comes up, you definitely look away. And when you
Mhm,
look away to see the sun coming up and you look back and they're gone, because a lot of it's based in the like fear of the dark and what's in the dark and what
mhm.
those shadows are. So as soon as the light puts light on those shadows, then
We could be doing the, I like the idea, doing, like, kind of the poetry thing, like, maybe the poem wasn't very good, maybe that's the thing that I was losing at.
the final.
Yeah, but then we're sitting there kind of debating it, and then I'm watching the sunrise as I give, like, a monologue and not paying attention to where
Mhm.
he's at, and I, say something, like, kind of beautiful in that sentiment and then turn, and he's not there. Just, like, have, like, kind of a
Ooh, I like
moment of,
that.
like, emotional resolution right as dawn is hitting, and it's like there's, very much inspired by, I think, the Midnight Mass, it's a Mike Flanagan show, it's on Netflix, it's about, like, kinda this derelict town that's an island off the west coast of the United States. And it's a like a vampire story, but also just like the show is just full of all of these like very poignant monologues where it's just like they're just having this huge deep conversation, and you can tell it's like, yeah, it's about this thing, but you're like you're just doing this to write this monologue kind of thing, and it's really really
Right.
beautiful. And I think that would be a really fun way to like have one of those things where it's like it becomes meta narrative, it becomes like metatextual, where it's like no, there's obviously like the source or inspiration, the epiphany of this moment is not so much the thing that is currently happening. It's the life that the person is living more at large. And so you have something that is like slightly resonant, which is also like, I have to find that there's probably a very intimidating thing for writers to write. It's like, oh, I have to give it a character an epiphany. So I have to invent brilliance in this moment. It's the people that write the detective novels, and they're like, "I have to solve the greatest crime ever." And you're like, "Oh, so you literally have to write that. You have to solve that. I don't know how you do
Yeah, you
this.
have
I
to
don't."
commit and then
Yeah,
solve the
yeah,
greatest crime.
exactly.
I think that the way that we've set it up is like going to the bar by yourself, leaving by yourself, walking through the woods by yourself. I think that there could be a lot of like inner feelings of loneliness and a lack
Hmm.
of belonging. And then that big epiphany monologue could be about like finding belonging within yourself instead of seeking outside approval.
Yeah.
That's not really the word I'm looking for, but
Or it could also just be like I mean, like my character's very driven to isolation, very driven to
mhm.
like getting away from people. And also like I think there's a revolving shame around drinking, which I think you could have a weird shame source of it with how the Christian culture, well, that might be hard to write in. Because I think a lot of people are like, "What are you talking about?" And you're like, "Oh, it's a big thing that I grew up with. That like a lot of people in my environment are intimately aware. That other people are like, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard." But maybe there's some other type of shame. Maybe there's some type of like character flaw that you're kind of recognizing early on, and then maybe there's a way to like solve that. Or maybe it's something as simple as like he's just very much looking forward to being back home, or like at the where he's staying, because it's like that's where his friends are. He's grown tired of the isolation and like desires to be around people at this point. Some type of
Yeah. I think
development.
that you could write the alcohol and Christianity guilt around them monologue with that shame, but I and this is something that I think comes up a lot where you want to write to the masses, but you
Yeah.
write the best when you're writing about yourself and when you're
Mm.
writing about something that you deeply connect to. So I think that while a more general fear or shame would have more people relating to it, I think that a very specific one that you have and that you would relate to will be better written.
Hmm.
So, I would if this was something that we were actually writing, I would say to write about the shame that you were feeling, because I think that that will be a better written monologue than a monologue that was more general just to
Yeah.
appeal to more people.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and then, where do we go from there? It's
And then
daybreak,
the light came up. You went home.
I went home.
The
Stopped
story's over, yeah.
stopped by on the way home, grabbed a bite to eat, grabbed a coffee,
Ooh, that's good.
just
Yeah.
some type of but that
I
was a
think, yeah,
strange
you
night.
go into the convenience store, maybe you
Mhm.
pass on a water and you get something else because 'cause you're like a little water bottles right now.
I think it'd be fun to, like, still be carrying the water bottle that he gave me and, like, walk into the convenience store and, like, the attendant just says something like, "Oh, I haven't seen that brand in a long time," or something.
Ooh,
Just like you're like,
yeah. Yeah, just to sort of
just like this empty water bottle you're
yeah,
throwing in
to
the
give
trash.
more
Some element of that's a strange little thing. I also like a lot of, I think, stories that, in the last page or two, or like the last chapter, give you some element to like play with the what exactly happened the rest of the story. Because I think in a
mhm,
story like this, obviously, like, the back of the cover is gonna make a big deal, but, like, there's some people that are not going to take the supernatural element to the story, and then there's some people are gonna really latch onto it, and I think being able to, like, play back and forth and really, like, kind of give some parlance at the very end to being like, "Hmm, maybe you should have been paying attention to the weird kind of quasi-psychological component of, reality early on."
I love when there are little breadcrumbs like that throughout
Mhm.
a story, so I think that that one's good. And I think that we have a beginning, middle, and end. I think that
Yeah.
we have written through our story. Is there
Mhm.
anything else that you want to add?
No, I think a character backstory, I think it'd be very fun to have him obsessed with kind of like literature of some sort as a way to like maybe the story is also a character reckoning through or finding inspiration from literary figures of like kind of thinking in some quotes or the quotes are kind of driving this inspiration or some type of thing where it's like there is a background, I think both for character development or for character background, but also like as a way for the character, I think through isolation to still have some sense of tie towards something, and maybe it's religion
Mhm.
or whatever it is exactly, but I do think that would be a fun thing to do, especially to maybe show some parody in some sense with, like, what the fairy lacks, like, maybe drop a quote, but the
Yeah.
fairy doesn't it's a famous quote, but the fairy doesn't know it, or a movie quote or something that's like, "Hmm, that he should have understood what I was saying there."
It might be too on the nose, but if we're gonna do famous literary quotes, I think that if you drop in a few from Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream,
Mm,
in which there are fairies,
yeah.
then that would be kind of funny.
Yeah.
But I can see if that's like, okay, we get it. There
Yeah,
are
right, right.
fairies.
You have explored this one exhaustively. Can we relax
Yeah.
a little bit? That's so funny. Yeah. I like the idea of the character being nerdy in some capacity, but like exactly what maybe even movie nerd or like song quotes. He's really loves 70s rock and which is like very psychedelic and very, it's like a lot of people just like tripping their way through existence and I think like he's just really dying to have his own crazy experiences and weirdly enough has
Yeah.
it, while by himself on the Irish coast or something.
Oh, I mean, we don't have to do this part, but I think it would be very interesting if like he was a journalist or someone who like likes to tell his stories and it's something that he can't prove ever even happened, much
Oh,
less like get somebody else to believe that this crazy experience happened to him.
yeah. I was a history major, so you could really do it about kind of history and stuff too, just like a person studying history obsessed with like learning about the past. And
Mhm.
you realize like in this story, he's reckoning with the fact that his own past is somehow he's not sure about it. I think like someone devoted to finding the uniqueness in other people is now just like kind of unsettled by the uniqueness of his own experience.
I think that if he was really interested in history, that would be a good like extra reason for why he's taking the walk because he wants to go and see the ruins.
Mhm.
So he's like, because I care so much about the history of this area,
Yeah.
so I have to go and look at it.
It's like I wonder what other people thought about it at night out here. I'll go
Mhm.
experience it for myself and see what thoughts come to me.
Yeah.
That would be a really easy way to, like, bring in kinda quotes and stuff too. Thinking about, like, how other
Mhm.
people viewed the past, and then you can still bring in, like, literature into that type of a thing too, because it's like, yeah, I think a lot of historians are really drawn into being readers as well because, I think there's this large kind of like what was culture like at the time and trying to understand things beyond just like the mortician's notes. Like you have to get into kind of the vibe or the essence of an era, and that you do that through fiction, you do that through the culture as much as you do through like the actual like court transcripts or anything like that. Just an anthropologist just trying to find his own weird existence.
Well, and aren't we all?
Yeah, exactly.
I feel good about our story. Is there anything you want to add before we move on to book rec?
Oh, no, I don't think so. I'm very happy with that. That was very fun. Thank you for walking through that with me.
Of course. I didn't even have to do it by myself, so it was great. So I like to end all of my episodes by getting a few book recs. So to begin with, what is your all-time favorite book or series?
Okay, and just because I know your listenership, I'm actually gonna give two. I'm gonna give my nonfiction one because I think that's my brand, that's what I do, and so maybe I can draw some people into nonfiction. But I'll give a fiction one because I think probably your listeners do a lot more fiction. So my favorite nonfiction book of all time is "They Can't Kill Us Until They Kill Us" by Hanif Abdurraqib, which is this creative essay collection, kind of about music, especially like the punk rock scene during the late 2000s, and it's also about grief. It's also about being a black Muslim man in the Midwest of the United States during the height of like kind of anti-Muslim and the racist policies driving the American empire in the post 9/11 years. And so it's all these like reckonings with identity and reckonings with personhood, and the whole time trying to be part of a culture and finding yourself distant from it, and also being like he is a poet by training, and so it's this like really beautiful reflective piece of like what art and culture should mean to me and how it should resonate and all of these types of things. And I just love it. He's got this essay in there about Carly Rae Jepsen, and I've now had to read it in two different grad school classes. Like, that's not a joke. One of the most hauntingly exciting essays you will ever read, and it's about how much he loved going to a Carly Rae Jepsen concert. So, yeah, if you cannot get behind that, I don't know that I trust you as a reader. And any of you, I'm not even talking to Ashley. I'm talking to the whole crowd.
I can get behind Carly Rae
It's
Jepsen.
so good. And then my favorite fiction book, I read it last year, and it ended up being my favorite book of the year. And I literally think about it constantly. It's called "When We Cease to Understand the World" by Benjamin Labatut. And this is a look of both nonfiction and fiction. So I kind of lied in saying that this was my fiction. It is, but it's a look at basically the scientists that created like the nuclear revolution. So all of like the most famous scientists in the world during like the 30s and 40s and kind of the era of scientific revolution happening. And it's all about how they went insane. And so it gives these like real people. So like these people that you are familiar with as historical figures, and then it is their life story kind of retold. And then you don't know what is fiction, you don't know what is nonfiction, you don't know like what elements he is actually being truthful about and what elements that he is inventing. And so it takes these like famous people and gives them these beautiful stories. And the book's only like 240 pages, and it's about like I think 4 or 5 different scientists. So you have basically these short stories that end up being these like wildly creative and beautiful character examinations that are all kind of like mirroring each other, but like stacking on top of each other at the same time. And you get kind of one side of it is this weird internal biography, and then the other side is like geopolitics, and this other side is like the psychologicalization of becoming insane. And I just think it's like it's so beautiful and it's so creative and it's so mesmerizing to be stuck in a world where you don't know what is real and what is not real. If you can't tell from the story that we just spent 45 minutes talking about, I love that element to storytelling. So yeah, that's one of my favorite books.
That sounds really good. I'll have to check that.
It's
And
so
it
good.
sounds
Yeah.
short, so that's
Yeah,
good.
it's short, and it will just. I read it last year, and I had to go to a friend's birthday party when we were going like duck pin bowling, and it was supposed to be this like nice fun time. And I had like 60 pages left of the book, and then had to go to the birthday party. And I remember being angry. I mean, I was like so mad that I had to like go out in public. I had to like take a 2-hour break from my book, and all I wanted to do was go home and just like let myself be consumed by the story that I had started that morning. Yeah, it's definitely one of those, like, if you've got a free Saturday, that's when I recommend checking it out.
Yeah, so you can do it all at once.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
What was the last book that you read that you cannot stop thinking about?
The last book that I read that I can't stop thinking about is A Physical Education by Casey Johnston. This is a kind of memoir, kind of a cultural memoir of her finding her path into getting into lifting. She had been like a runner with like kind of an eating disorder, a very standard, and I'm sorry if this is like offensive, a very standard like white girl life of like, oh, I have to run 7 miles so I can eat a French fry kind of thing. It's like this very like ingrained part of American culture with like beauty standards and with diet culture and with like disordered eating and how we trick ourselves into really unhealthy habits as a source of like trying to be acceptable to others. And so it's her unpacking all of that while getting into lifting and relearning like, what do calories actually mean when they become essential for building yourself? Like when it's no longer about how you restrict yourself, but it's how you build yourself. And so it's how you gain strength. And so she gets into lifting and so goes through this kind of cultural history of lifting, goes through kind of her own understanding of how the body works. And also at the same time is like all unpacking her concepts of like how women's bodies should be, and I think there's a lot of, a lot of women don't go to the gym because they don't want to get super bulky. And so a lot of her kind of internal thoughts during that time is like reasoning through that of like why do I have to be built for a society that will never care about me in the first place? And so yeah, it has a lot of science writing and culture writing and nutrition writing and fitness writing. So it's all these kind of like different components that all create this book that I think is just something I think about all the time, especially like as I'm getting back into my fitness journey. It has really been one of those things that's like been incredibly inspiring to see someone go through a lot of those same thought processes that I've had, but also come out of it being able to figure out a story, figuring out themselves and figuring out kind of how they can make sense of this weird world that we're living in through just like going to the gym, which I think is a really creative and really beautiful way to try and explain modern society.
Yeah, that does sound cool. I will also check that one out. Oh no, you're adding to my TBR. I've
Oh,
got
I'm
so many
sorry.
things I have to read. No, it's okay.
Yeah, I'm probably like the one person that you've had on your podcast where you're like, I literally have no idea any of these books you're talking
I've
about. And I'm
never
like,
read that book.
yeah, exactly.
That's okay. That's good. We should always be trying new things. I should always try
Exactly.
new genres. Ooh, I have a nonfiction rec for you.
Ooh, I love it.
This is called Forager, if you haven't already read it. Basically, it is a girl who grew up in a cult.
Ooh. I love cult upbringing stuff. There's so much to play with there.
This is by Michelle Dowd. It's called Forager: Field Notes for Surviving a Family Cult. And she grew up in the wilderness, I don't remember where, in the mountains. And her family was a survivalist cult. They were like doomsday prepping. And so she grew up always having to they would drop her and other siblings
Mm.
7 or 8 years old, just like in the
In the
wilderness,
woods
and be
and
like,
tell them to figure it
you
out.
got to figure this
Yeah.
out. Yeah. So she goes through what I find really interesting in this book is that it does give you field note pages. So at the beginning of each chapter, it'll give you a plant and it'll draw the plant and it'll describe the plant and it'll tell you
Mm.
how it's edible, what seasons it's edible, what parts of it are and are not edible, and why. And it's like, well, this is edible if you boil it. This is edible if you eat only these leaves and not
Yeah.
these leaves. And only once they've matured to this color should you eat it. And if not, it will poison you. Or if you add this to it, then you can eat it. If you don't add this, you can't eat it. And I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah,
I
I
love
love
to
that.
know what I can eat,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
weird nonsense in the woods I can eat.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I think it's
have you
very
ever heard the
interesting.
study that they just like released this, I think it was Oxford English Dictionary, that just said like that the part of culture that is losing the most language like in English is words about nature and words about like our natural environment, that like we as people living in the 21st century just do not like on a like definition level do not understand nature in the same way that people in the past did. And so like, yeah, we
That
are
makes
inventing a
sense.
lot of words for the internet and for like weird digital realities, cryptocurrencies and all that type of stuff, but we're losing so much of our capacity to understand nature because we're now just like losing the words, about like how the wind makes different types of noises based on different environments and stuff. And I was like, oh wow, that really, like I like that idea of like this detachment that we're having from the natural world and like
Yeah.
trying to, breach that just a little bit more. And I think that sounds like a great book for that.
I want to read that study. That sounds really interesting. Do you have an auto by author? Do you have anyone who consistently their writing, you have to read all of it?
Yeah, I've got a few. Hanif Abdurraqib, like we said, he's my favorite author of all time. I buy everything that he does. There's a historian called Greg Grandin who writes these big U.S. history books and kind of like reckoning with like what the U.S. empire is. I buy everything that he writes. I think he's absolutely incredible. As I read more and more, I find myself more drawn into like following authors' trajectory along. And so I think there's just a ton of authors now that I've read their first book that like I can't wait to check out their second book. So it's not that they have like a huge, like
Blog.
catalog. Yeah, not a huge backlog. Yeah, I think and if anyone wants like fun pop kind of history, there's an author called Timothy Egan that he writes these wild historical stories about some of the craziest things that ever happened. He wrote about the resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan in like the 1920s in Indianapolis, and it became this like phenomenon. That's called A Fever in the Heartland, and it's this incredibly well reported story. But he also wrote this book called The Worst Hard Time, which is about the Dust Bowl in the 1930s. And so he's always kind of trying to like tell these big stories of like the country at large, but through these like narrow scopes of like, how do you understand this event? How do you understand this family? How do you understand this person that was dealing with this thing? And I think he makes history really come alive, but also lets it be personal in a respect that a lot of historians struggle to do. A lot of historians are really good at telling the big story, but struggle to tell the intimacies of what life really was like. And I think Timothy Egan does a spectacular job at getting down to that. So he would be an author that I think across the spectrum, and like whether someone's a nonfiction reader or not, he's one of those authors that like I think anyone can come to enjoy because he's got these elements of really beautiful writing and journalistic writing, and then also an understanding for how story works as a craft.
I think that people do like yearn for those kinds of very personal stories
Yeah.
about history. Obviously this is very different, but I'm a librarian and a lot of young kids are obsessed with the I survived stories, which are
Mm,
fiction, but they take place like during real historical events. So it's like I survived, literally the Dust Bowl is one of them. So
yeah.
it's like I survived the Dust Bowl. I survived, and
Yeah.
so it'll tell you like what it was like to live in that time and like the fears that people had during the event and everything. And literally they love them. And they're like, I need more. And I'm like,
Yeah, I
I
imagine.
have all of them that exist. I can't make more.
I also think there's just like there's a growing capacity for natural disaster and climate change kind of stories, like the environment as the enemy in some sense.
Mhm.
And so I think like the survival stories are only going to become more popular. And so yeah, it's totally unsurprising that like those types of books are the ones that kids that are living with like a horrible paranoia about their future are they're like, I have to read that book that is obviously
Yeah.
very geared towards expanding that sense of dread. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what I
Well,
was doing
yeah.
when I was, when I was 12 years old. I was like, give me the most depressing stuff. And now I'm 32 and I'm still doing that. And now I'm doing it on the internet for a very small amount of money. And it's very fun.
Yeah. Hey, as long as you're having fun, that's all that
Exactly,
matters.
exactly.
And that was If It Was a Book. If you liked what you heard, feel free to drop us a rating or a review telling us what you liked or what you want to see in future episodes. If you would like to submit a story for the chance to have it rewritten by one of our guests, you can do so by emailing your memory to ifitwasabook@gmail.com. You can follow the podcast on Instagram and TikTok at If It Was a Book. You can follow me, the host, at wickedreads on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. And Nathan, where can people find you?
You can find me at Schizophrenic Reads all across social media.
And this will be the last episode before our holiday hiatus, but you can catch up on all of the authors, influencers, and librarians that we interviewed in season 1. As always, video episodes are available on YouTube. Audio is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening. Bye.